biochemical basics of proteins, peptides, and amino acids. Every cell in a living organism, plant, animal, or human, contains thousands of types of proteins, peptides, amino acids, and other molecules. Proteins and peptides are essential for the functioning of every cell in our body. The fundamental building block of all peptides and proteins are amino acids, more specifically alpha amino acids. The basic differentiating feature of proteins and peptides are the size, composition, and the structure of the molecules. Peptides are smaller than proteins. In general terms, peptides are defined as molecules that consist of between 2 and 50 amino acids, whereas proteins are made up of 50 and more amino acids. In other words, proteins are very large peptides. Peptides and proteins are chains of amino acids, and each protein and peptide has a unique function in our physiology and biochemistry. The sequential order, number, and chemical composition and characteristics of the amino acids in the protein determine how the protein functions. The sequential order, the two-dimensional arrangement, the number and chemical characterization of the amino acids in the protein determines the structure, the three-dimensional configuration of the protein, as well as how the protein operates. To get a better understanding of the role of proteins and peptides in the human body, we can select various levels of depth of perspective and view. At the highest level of aggregation, we can look at proteins, the largest molecules comprised of at least 50 amino acid molecules. Then we can look at the next lower level of aggregation to peptides. The smallest peptide is a dipeptide, which is an organic compound derived from 2 amino acids. Depending on which 2 amino acids we combine, we can find a variety of different dipeptides in our organism. Aspartame, for example, the artificial sweetener, is a dipeptide which our body does not produce, while carnosine, a dipeptide which is highly concentrated in muscle and brain tissue, is produced in the skeletal muscle via biosynthesis. Tripeptides, on the other hand, are molecules comprised of 3 amino acids. One of the most widespread tripeptides in the human body is the powerful antioxidant and free radical scavenger glutathione. Endorphins are another famous class of peptides which play a significant role in our biochemistry and neurochemistry. At a molecular level, amino acids, more specifically alpha amino acids, are the fundamental building block of all proteins and peptides. At this point, it is important to understand that our body makes its own proteins and peptides via biosynthesis. In other words, our body is building its own peptides and proteins from the amino acids, peptides, and proteins we ingest in our nutrition and food. We consume our food, which contains a large variety of proteins, peptides, and amino acids. Our body cracks down these proteins into peptides and amino acids and then rebuilds via biosynthesis its own proteins and peptides. Proteins and peptides in our food cannot be easily absorbed orally. One of the reasons is that these molecules are too big and not easily soluble in our body fluids. Absorption is a process of taking up chemical compounds into cells through tissues and organs via diffusion and osmosis. Absorption is the first step in our digestive process and necessary to get any substances into our bloodstream for further distribution and processing in our body. In order to make proteins absorbable, the acid in the stomach destroys first the three-dimensional structure of proteins and peptides. The same destruction of the three-dimensional structure of proteins can be observed when we fry an egg in a hot pan, when the translucent liquid egg white changes into a solid white form. We get the same effect when we expose egg white to an environment of low pH, acidic environment. When we pour vinegar over egg white, we can observe the same change. It becomes clear now that the quality, the molecular composition of our protein intake is paramount for the biosynthesis of our own body proteins and peptides. In our next segment, we will discuss in detail the 20 alpha amino acids which our body needs to operate.